this edition of BATV, Bruce Dixon talks about the new Black Miss Leadership class and the moneyed interests that pull their strings. The conscious hip-hop group Treble Army has a new video called Disco Obama. But whose tune is he really dancing to? Professor Tony Monteiro explains why the U.S. is choosing war, and yet more war. And some spoken word from the treasure troves of the BW Moving Images Vault. But first, Glenn Ford asked a question. What kind of role models do Black people want for their children? The kind that fight the powers that be, or the ones that just go with the flow?
For many African Americans, Barack Obama's first run for the presidency was less a conventional political campaign than a continuation of all the Black struggles that had come before over the centuries. The usual rules of the political game did not apply in most Black folks' minds when it came to the junior senator from Illinois. For the first time in history, organized Black America made not a single demand, except that Obama make us all proud by winning the highest office in the land. Nothing was asked of him. Even the demand for a Marshall Plan for the cities that had been a standard item of the Black political agenda for the past 4 decades fell by the wayside. Barack Obama got a free pass from Black people in 2008. As a result, he was allowed to run to the right of his main Democratic opponents on major issues. He's been moving steadily rightward ever since. Yet, even as one disappointment followed another, Black support for Obama has only marginally declined. After more than 3 years, with Blacks facing the worst economic setbacks in modern times, even the expectation of substantial relief from the White House has all but disappeared. When confronted on this record, many Black Obama supporters fall back on a now familiar theme, that what is most important for African Americans, more important than issues of housing and jobs and war and peace, and even more important than mass Black incarceration, is that Black children have a role model to look up to in the White House. We at Black Agenda Report see the Obama legacy quite differently. For 4 years now, Black America has been politically neutralized, self-censored, and self-silenced, afraid to utter a word that might embarrass the first Black president. Black politics has become irrelevant by choice. It is not that Black demands are ignored, but that we are making no demands. It is not that the larger society refuses to listen to what Black people say, but that we aren't saying much of anything. If this continues for another 4 years, it will represent a kind of historical black hole, an 8-year period of Black political stagnation and irrelevance. During this time, an entire cohort, a whole generation of young African Americans will have come of age. They will have few, if any, contemporary role models of the kind they will truly need to fight their way out of the looming economic abyss, because we will not have taught them how to fight. That will be the legacy of the age of Obama, 8 years of Black silence, which is roughly the same length of time that witnessed the most intense struggles of the period we call the 60s, when another generation of Black people came of age. It was an era when young Blacks grappled with the most fundamental questions of how to build a new society, a new world. African Americans drew on the lessons of previous eras and taught each other new lessons. They not only had fighting role models, they became role models whose lives and work we still revere. What will the age of Obama bequeath our children, other than pretty pictures of a Black family that used to live in the White House? And what use will that be without a strong and vibrant Black political movement in the dark years ahead?
Our guest on this week's Thoughtmaker interview is Anthony Monteiro, Professor of African American Studies at Temple University in Philadelphia.
Dr. Monteiro, you're an accomplished academic, but you've also been a political activist and I would say a political leader all of your adult life. And we're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
The United States seems to be in a period of perpetual war. And it seems these wars are all wars of choice. At least that's what President Obama says. And yet this guy got a Nobel Peace Prize in his first year in office.
Well, that's one of the great contradictions of our time in history, that war is being defined as peace, and I guess peace will be defined as war. Obviously, President Obama is the commander-in-chief of the most aggressive nation in the world.
And why then does he have a reputation as one who is trying to bring peace?
Well, you know, that's a manufactured reputation, and it's invented and manufactured by the people whose interest is in war, but in defining war as peace. By that I mean that 1%, the infamous 1%, the financial oligarchy. They have defined him and branded him as a peacemaker, and he really is not.
You have linked this economic crisis, which is a world economic crisis, with the renewed belligerency of the United States.
Exactly. You know, if I were to define the major factors in our world, I would have to say it is the global economy. And I think we're looking at a real meltdown. Some are saying in 2013, the global economy will be far worse than it was in 2008, when, you know, the financial crisis and the recession began. Really, Glenn, what we're looking at is the possibility of a real Great Depression of the type of the 1930s. Now, when you combine this economic crisis with the perpetual war scenario of the Obama administration, we're looking at a very dangerous moment in history.
What is Black America's position as we enter this period of great danger in the world? We know that historically African Americans have been the group most opposed to U.S. adventures abroad, and yet President Obama is juggling all kinds of adventures, and we don't seem to hear much from the Black leadership class, or should we call them the Black misleadership class?
That's a great question. You know, I think Black America has to rediscover who we are. We have lost our way, we have lost our identity. When you consider the fact that the paramount leader of the second half of the 20th century, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., said that peace and the struggle against poverty and racism were the triplets of progressive struggle in his time, and I would suggest in our time. I think we've gotten away from that, and we have to rediscover our grounding and our roots in that great moment of our struggle and in that type of leadership that Martin Luther King Jr. represented.
Many of us go through the exercise of asking ourselves periodically, what would Dr. King say, or what would Malcolm say?
Or what would W.E.B. Du Bois say? Or what would Ella Baker say? Or what would Fannie Lou Hamer say? Or what would Paul Robeson say? And I could pretty much assure you that the greatest and most consistent of our leaders would be calling for peace, would be calling for real war on poverty, and would be calling for an end to white supremacy in all of its forms.
We hear many voices who say that we are in a stage, a period in history where there is an attempt to recolonize Africa. But maybe that kind of begs the question of whether Africa, most African nations, ever really achieved independence from the Europeans and from the United States.
Well, if you read the great leaders of the 1960s and 70s, what they openly said is that while Africa achieved political independence in the 1950s and 60s, the real struggle to liberate Africa was to achieve economic independence or economic decolonization. In fact, the great Pan-Africanist Kwame Nkrumah wrote a very important book entitled Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. And hence, the struggle for economic independence and against neo-colonialism is the stage that Africa has not yet achieved.
And yet, under President Obama, AFRICOM, that's the U.S. African Military Command, has engaged in exponentially increased activities on the ground.
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. And I would even go beyond AFRICOM. I mean, we just have to look at NATO. And I think the test case was the invasion of Libya and the brutal assassination of Muammar Gaddafi. What a lot of people forget is that Gaddafi was probably the greatest Pan-Africanist of his generation. He and the Libyan government did more for African unity and for the economic liberation of Africa than any single leader. So the overthrow of the government of Libya and the assassination, brutal assassination of Muammar Gaddafi were actually blows against Africa's independence. And it was a way of installing neo-colonialism and legitimizing U.S. and NATO military forces in Africa. By the way, no American president has ever gone this far in the military intervention in Africa as has Barack Obama.
Africa now does a lot more trade with China than it does with the United States.
Exactly.
Might that have something to do with the increased military activity by the United States in Africa?
I think it does, but I think the other side of it is that these wars that the United States is waging are really resource wars. Libya's oil, Sudan's oil, Nigeria's oil, Angola's oil, and then all of the other minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the other nations of Africa. Africa is a mineral treasure house. And just like the colonial powers fought a war in 1914 to 1918, World War I, over the resources of Africa, that could happen in this period as well.
Dr. Tony Monteiro with some words of wisdom. And now some different kinds of spoken words on Black Agenda Television.
The name of this next piece goes like this. Mine eyes, mine eyes have seen the glory. Mine eyes have seen the glory. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the burning. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the burning. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the burning of the. All I see, witness the black man on the supreme being. See me, see who my children be. Secret societies, people hiding thoughts from me. As symbols take authority, kind of like tricknology. Shades bring out 3D. Now I clearly see how you reverse psychology. But you don't scare me because my third eye sees the library. Lies buried around the corner. I've got cable, yeah, time. Warner, let me warn you about a time. Not NBC when we will CBS. Get it? CBS. Written across your forehead, nevertheless. Can't you ABC that the black man contains the XX, the XY, the XX, the XY, the XX, the XYZ? So take that to the WB. I look at a tree and I see UPN. And believe me, I don't want to see that again. My eyes have seen the glory of the burning of the beast. The drama never ceases to bore me. The man plans while we watch our stories. Is it me watching TV or is TV watching me? My eyes can see right through the skies like a real beast should be draped in lies. I see you babble. the parasite found its host. About false power you brag and boast. One day you will burn like toast. The beast also had eyes of a Jew, fiery blue. The beast takes an image of folks like me and you. But you want to know what's really scary? The beast looks like the Virgin Mary, and I know that the beast still sees us. Take on the image of baby Jesus. But you know what I really want to know, you see? Is who the beast really be. Because I look in the mirror, and I see me. That's right, the beast dwells deep in my mind, taking on images of many different kinds. That's why it's up to me to call upon the God that lies in me. Jehovah Yahweh Jah. Thank you. Let your powers manifest in me. Help me to kill the enemy. Exorcism, exorcism. I see my people lying in skepticism. Mine eyes have seen no democracy. Your outbursts of hypocrisy. Your false laws have authority, but that won't last for long. You see my people hip hopping while we singing the blues. Black man wanted on Eyewitness News. Yeah, I witnessed it, so don't pretend. One day I went to CNN. Mine eyes are still young, so that's part of the story. Mine eyes have seen the glory. Ashe.
Atlanta. It used to be a focal point of the civil rights movement. Later, it bragged that it was a city of black millionaires. Now it's a place nominally run by blacks who are answerable to white billionaires. From his vantage point in Atlanta, Black Agenda Report managing editor Bruce Dixon asked the question, what happened to the black movement?
In the last third of the 20th century, Black America was the immovable rock that anchored the left side of American political life. It was cities with black majorities like Detroit, St. Louis, and New Orleans that built public housing and free hospitals, that passed living wage referenda, and that elected reliably anti-war voices to high public office. Black America was literally and figuratively where the left lived. It was a time when civil rights organizations and African American politicians could reasonably be expected to object, to protest, to publicly resist blatant crimes against their constituents on the part of governments and corporations. But by the turn of the 21st century, corporations had begun to finance the rise of a new class of elite black political leaders. Politicians like Atlanta's Kasim Reed and Shirley Franklin, Philadelphia's Michael Nutter, Newark's Cory Booker, and of course, President Barack Obama. At the same time, those corporations and their so-called charitable foundations became the major funders of what used to be called civil rights organizations, like the Urban League, the National Action Network, and the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Except for ceremonial observances these days, like the anniversaries of King's birth and death, Black History Month, and the usual pleas to vote for them on Election Day, Black America's political leaders are pretty much free from obligations to black people. What used to be vigilant, vocal civil rights organizations are now silent in the face of corporate crimes like environmental racism against black communities, let alone the wider implications of such crimes for all Americans. One of the very best examples of this is found in Georgia, where the Obama administration in 2009 granted Southern companies $800 million in loan guarantees to underwrite the construction of the first 2 nuclear reactors built in this country in 30 years, right next door to a leaky, hazardous pair of existing nukes in a poor, mostly black Georgia town where almost every family already has a case of cancer or 2. Local residents held meetings. For years they demanded that someone, anyone, the federal or state government, Southern companies, anybody, conduct ongoing testing of their local air, water, soil, fish, and wildlife. They got CNN and other media to do a few stories, but which national black organization would raise the cry and walk the walk with them? The most logical candidate was the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, founded by Dr. Martin Luther King himself and headquartered in nearby Atlanta. But that did not happen. Why? Possibly because a CEO of Southern companies headed up SCLC's building fund, raising more than $3 million to pay for its Auburn Street headquarters. So SCLC is silent. The radioactive poisoning of poor black communities alone should have roused black political leaders to militantly defend their supposed constituencies. If the Bush-Cheney gang had done such a thing, cries of environmental racism would ring across the country. The corporate makeover-takeover of black political leadership makes new and heinous crimes against all Americans possible that were unthinkable before. Georgia's Public Service Commission, the agency that supposedly looks out for consumers, has allowed Southern companies to charge $10 to $20 a month to its 3.5 million monthly ratepayers to pay the construction costs in advance of this deadly monstrosity. Walmart, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Wells Fargo, McDonald's, Lockheed, GE, Bank of America, and others all sit on the advisory boards of all the civil rights organizations to ensure that black leadership does not speak up against the privatization of public education, or for the right to organize unions, or the right to tax and regulate broadcasters, cable operators, cell phone companies, agribusiness, and especially that they do not follow the example of Dr. Martin Luther King and oppose imperial wars. Black America used to be where the left lived, but that was before we let corporations choose our leaders. Until we throw up new leaders that answer to black people and not to corporations, American politics will have no solid left anchor. We will continue sliding rapidly rightward towards a prison state, towards economic depression, and toward endless global war.
The Black Agenda television team includes a dynamic people's activist named Sese, who is also the MC of the conscious hip-hop crew Trouble Army out of Phoenix, Arizona. This video creation is called Disco Bama.
I think the vote can only be used as a tool of organization. We can only use the vote to organize our people. Now, to really believe that we can put someone in office and that these people would be responsive to our needs is naive, politically naive. Because even if one of the black candidates who ran for office was to take the office of president, then black people must be prepared to fight against that person.
Why?
Because, you see, the system mandates the action of the individual. The individual does not determine how this country will function. This country works off the military-industrial complex, which means that it's profitable to wage war. And unless you devise another plan, another scheme to sustain, to boost this economy, then it's going to be necessary to wage war, whether a black individual is in office or a white individual is in office. Well, so we're talking about a complete a change in system.
So in love with you.
Now go wake your kids up out of bed. Tell them to show you the Disco Bama step. It's the same as before, not a dance unique. Hit the flow and indulge in your apathy. See the spin and the glitter of the disco ball, Obama bouncer. White House Club picture for America needs a makeover to its image more acceptable. Can jig a step or two, voters hit the flow. Tootsie roll to the post, cause the soul brother might sick the dogs on your disco godfather, Dolomite. Reaganomics was more, he's a manga for war. Order bombs dropping win awards of the Nobel Prize. Watch out, the man ain't getting half his grades. A black man as a president candidate. Sure, not quite, skin is black, you're surprised. Empires, agent, old man in black, neuralized. All memories and all legacy gets called Mongols. Bomb the continent, he source of self-esteem. Troy Davis, innocent, he let him die. Thanksgiving, turkey, he let electric slide. Disco, Disco Bama, can't keep what you did not promise. Disco, Disco Bama, can't keep what you did not promise. Now go wake your kids up out of bed, tell them to show you the Disco Bama step. It's the same as before, not a dance unique. Hit the flow and indulge in your apathy. No matter if elected emperor is ebony, terrorist deceptive rhetoric is still your enemy. How the struggle conclude with Messiah, teaching the Dougie to Jew genociders. Climatic zones out control, frenzy. Palestine bulldoze, settled homes, Israeli. Ayanna Jones, 9-year-old killed in sleep. Very old Sherman Cole, beer with the police. Hope in vain, you're insane. Expect Obama change it. Negro protege on Uncle Tom's plantation. Post-racial profiling, every cop engages. Put your hands on your head and spread them. Like up out of bed. Tell them to show you the disco bomber step. It's the same as before, not a dance unique. Hit the flow and indulge in your apathy. Disco, ritmo, get mo, ain't close, Negro. Residents forgot public strings. Disco, ritmo, get mo, ain't close, Negro. Election is attention he paid. Disco, ritmo, get mo, ain't close, Negro. Residents forgot public strings. Disco, ritmo, get mo, ain't close, Negro. Election is attention he paid. Disco, disco mama, can't keep what you did not promise. Disco, disco mama, can't keep what you did not promise.
And the interesting thing about the African American experience in this country is that we are sort of a mongrel people. I mean, we're all kind of mixed up.
Yeah.
For almost 6 years now, Black Agenda Report has been examining the world from a Black left perspective. We've made a lot of enemies and a lot of friends. And on October 12th, many of those friends will help us celebrate our 6th anniversary at New York's historic Riverside Church. We hope you'll join us for an evening with Dr. Cornel West and friends of Black Agenda Report. And you know that with Cornel West on hand, an inspiring time will be had by all. Now that's at Riverside Church in New York City on October 12th. Spend the evening with Dr. West and other brilliant movers and shakers, and with the Black Agenda Report team, including Glenn Ford, Bruce Dixon, Tony Montero, Margaret Kimberly, Nellie Bailey, Marsha Coleman Adebayo, Jemima Pierre, Jared Ball, and me, Ayana Nana Soul Jones. See you there.
This has been Black Agenda TV, news, commentary, and analysis from the Black Left. Black Agenda Television is produced by the people of BlackAgendaReport.com in cooperation with BW Moving Images.